strong for them, as well as the devices we need.
안녕하세요, 여러분. Good morning.
I think there's a
Good
lot of
morning.
reasons
Good
to still
morning.
focus on those
Good
growth plays.
Yeah.
But I'm not throwing the
해피
value
수요일입니다.
stocks that I
Happy
thought are.
Wednesday.
Buy some calls in lawyers, Doc.
오늘은
Their value is likely to go up.
어떻게
That's a
하면
good point.
여러분들 멋진 가슴을 만들 수 있는지 자, 오디오 체크. 자, 오늘은 끊기지 않고 잘 나오네요. 네. 끊기지 않고 잘 나오고 있습니다. 좋아요. Good morning. 안녕하세요, 여러분. Good morning.
Absolutely, Melissa. And in fact, solar,
Happy Wednesday.
EVs, you know.
안녕하세요, 세연님. 오, 개근상 줘야 되겠어, 개근상. 세연님 개근상 줘야 되겠어요. 아, 이걸 여기다 놓고 그냥 뺑뺑 돌려야 되겠다. 비디오 퀄리티를 높이기 위해서 이거를 여기다 놓고 그냥 돌려야 되겠다, 여러분. 이렇게. 아, 이게 훨씬 낫겠네. 맞죠, 여러분? 이렇게 돌리는 게 퀄리티가 훨씬 좋겠죠. 야, 이게 좋다. 이게 제가 좋은 트라이포드 굉장히 좋은 걸 샀어요. Alright, I bought very nice tripod.
Let's not forget, John, too. It's hard to get too negative.
Today's video,
It's easy to get caught up in
how to make
what
amazing chest.
several days.
Alright,
But when you look,
let's go.
longer term, you're going to get a vaccine. You're probably
자,
gonna get
실제 나이보다 어려 보이십니다. 20대. 저 몇 살인지 알아요, 세연님? 감사합니다. 세연님, 땡큐. 저 몇 살인지 알아요?
I'm here to tell you tonight, we believe we're on track to win this election.
We will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it.
Yep, those are the statements from former Vice President Biden and President Trump.
와, 가슴 운동의 꽃은 벤치프레스죠.
The presidential race has
자,
not been determined as of yet. We'll show you where the count stands, and we're getting more data from the key battleground state of Wisconsin. We'll take you there.
Number one chest workout, bench press.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Brennan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And we're going to start with the movement we've been watching in the stock futures over the last 12 hours because it's been a pretty wild ride. We were down as much as 470 points at the lows, and then we were up as much as 300 points at the highs. Things have since settled out, and you can take a look at where the futures stand right now. In fact, if you're checking out where the Dow is, it's an implied open of down by about 50 points right now. S&P futures are up by about 18 points, and then the Nasdaq is the big winner at this point. It's up by about 290 points, and there have been all kinds of theories about why the Nasdaq would be higher, why tech stocks would be higher. Some people were saying
최고의 가슴 운동은 벤치프레스입니다. 벤치프레스. Alright. Number one chest workout.
Today. You did have underperformance in those technology stocks over the last
bench press.
And there was a concern.
아, 이렇게 하니까 좋네. 여러분 흔들리지도 않고 좋네요.
So it would make sense
좋아요.
to sell some of your big winners that you've been seeing, tech stocks in particular, if you wanted to get ahead of that. If it looks like there's not going to be a blue wave, at least it may be
개근상으로 보여주시는 거야?
back into some of those names. And we are looking at the Nasdaq indicated up by about 280 points. Let's check out Treasury.
개근상으로 이거
That's
해줄게.
where a lot of activity happened overnight too. There was a flight to safety here. People were buying treasuries and buying big. In fact, at the height, the yield for the 10-year was sitting at 0.945%. We haven't seen yields like that in a very long time. It has settled back down, and you're now looking at the 10-year yield sitting just below 0.1% at 0.796%. Andrew.
이 가방.
Let's talk about where things
이거 이
stand
가방.
as of now. The voting
이렇게 멜 수도
is
있고,
over, but the counting is not
신발 가방 이런 거. 이거를 제가 라이브 하는 동안 하루도 빠짐없이 참석을 해서 열심히 좋아요도 누르고, 네, 좋아요도 누르고 하면 이렇게 개근상을 주도록 하겠습니다. 아직 확정된 건 아니에요, 아직.
Yes, in that race to 270, the president and Joe Biden now, neck and neck, really. 224 for Joe Biden in the Electoral College, 213 for Donald Trump in the Electoral College. A lot of states.
How to make your chest
a lot of these the battleground states
amazing
that we've been focusing on all along. But the Biden campaign,
it's not that hard.
3 a.m. hour, guys, releasing a statement very critical of the president for what he said. The Biden statement saying the president's statement tonight about trying to shut down the counting of duly cast ballots was outrageous. unprecedented and incorrect. It was outrageous because it is a naked effort to take away the democratic rights of American citizens. So where do we go from here? Well, if you look back at that map of the nation and look at Wisconsin, we're getting a little bit of new information, and that's the state that's actually moved a little bit over the course of the past hour or so. Shaquille Brewster from NBC News filing this report on Wisconsin, saying that Wisconsin does not have automatic recounts, even if the unofficial results are extremely close. But a losing candidate who wants to ask for a recount must wait until the last day a county board of canvassers meets, which is at least 1 week after the election. So if we are very tight in Wisconsin and it is close there now, there is the possibility, guys, of a recount there, but that couldn't start for a week after Election Day. So as we start to war game out the scenarios here of what this indecisive moment in American politics might look like, there are some scenarios where this could go on for a very long time, longer than just 24, 48 hours. Back over to you.
세연이 이거 받을 확률 상당히
David,
높아요.
walk us
지금
through,
잘하고
if you could,
계세요.
though,
자,
what's happening in Pennsylvania,
Alright.
given the references that the president made.
Okay, guys.
Where are we in Arizona right now?
Well,
Make sure you
Arizona
drink lots of
still,
water,
as
okay? 자,
I've been
여러분.
told, if you put the map back up, you can see
운동하실 때 물을 많이 마셔야 돼. 운동하기 전이랑 운동할 때랑
you
후랑.
remember, they were not allowed to start counting the votes
아침에
until
일어나서
election day, even those early votes that came
지금
in.
물 한 1,
So
2분
what we
정도
see
마셨어요.
now is 55.7
응답도
Trump,
하고.
43.
So before you work out,
a difference there of 677,000
at least drink 1 liter,
votes.
okay? And then
We'll
you
see
need to
what happens,
poo-poo
but the expectation has
first
always been
before you
that the
train.
vote count in Pennsylvania would be what they call the long count. This would take some time. And in Arizona, I can tell
자,
you,
오늘
just a couple
얼마큼
of
물을
hours
마시는지
ago,
한번
I
볼게요,
talked to a
여러분.
Republican consultant
운동할 때.
on the ground in the state of Arizona who
So,
said that the count
Another
there
a liter
in
here, okay?
County
Let's see how much I
stunningly
drink.
slow is the way this Republican consultant put it. That's the area around Phoenix. That's a fast-growing area in Arizona. Where we are now is 51.8% Biden, 46.8% Trump. This Republican consultant just a couple of hours ago was arguing to me that there still was at that point enough vote out there for Donald Trump to capture.
세연님 뭐 20대 초중반이라고 그러지 않았어요?
See whether that is still a possibility.
세연님 20대 초중반.
That would be an opportunity for Donald
맞죠?
Trump to snatch away a state that the Biden campaign
아,
has
이거
had its
삼각대
eyes
엄청
on
좋네,
all
이거,
through the
진짜로.
evening. And as we go through
짱이네.
the morning now, the morning hours, the scenarios become narrower and narrower for both
Alright.
candidates. But as of this
If you want to
moment
build your
right
chest
now,
muscle,
both of these candidates
bench
have a chance
press,
to win this
push-ups.
election, and we're just going to have to wait and see. And it could be, as we say, a long wait because of the situation in Pennsylvania, because of the situation, involving a hypothetical recount scenario in Wisconsin. There are scenarios where this takes a long time to work itself out.
Hey, Eamon, how many, I've seen different figures on what's remaining in Pennsylvania, and what needs to be made up. I've seen some that say that Joe Biden would need 80% of the remaining of votes. Do you know the actual math there?
I don't have it as I sit here right now. We can put the Pennsylvania viz back up, and you can see where we stand right now. What the estimation is, as you look at Pennsylvania, that there are 1.8 million votes remaining. So there's a lot out there, but 74% in. There's still a lot of vote out there.
Yeah,
that we don't
I
have
saw
an
one.
answer on.
I saw that there's 1 million left. That obviously that math wouldn't work there on the 80% there. And I don't know, is it still
I
in there?
can't do math off the top of my head. We're gonna sleep all night.
The one I saw
I don't
was
want to calculate it for you.
Right, the one I saw was there was a million.
Make sure you do enough warm-up. 자, 여러분.
Is it urban? Is it rural? What's left?
워밍업을 충분히 하셔야 합니다. 워밍업을.
With
The early vote that's still left, because that's,
Enough warm-up.
there's been votes that came in early.
와,
Because of
beautiful.
the rules say
자, 트라이퍼드가 완전 뷰티풀이에요, 여러분.
early votes, the vote by mail or the absentee ballots.
좋죠. 카메라 안 흔들리니까.
After the polls closed, and so that
아, 이거 봐.
portion of it is the early votes. which is
이야,
why
좋다.
was always that the president would be ahead
이렇게 해야 되나?
because he would get the majority of the
자,
vote
이게
that turned out that
아,
day.
아닌데.
The earlier vote
이거는
takes longer to
수평이고.
count. The expectation is that Joe
좋아요.
Biden would have a bigger lead there, which is why you're going to have to be patient and wait to see what happens with these votes.
Have you ever seen a?
제 나이 기억하시고. 세연이 20대 초중반. 20대 초중반 아니에요? 한 25 근처?
They said exactly that. I mean, the people needed to get some sleep, and these
I
people went
went
on
to
a
bed.
ship
I
for
had
13
to.
hours.
And
You got some sleep?
Make sure you do good warm up.
I got about
Good warm up.
3 hours or so, but it was a hard sleep, I'll tell you. The alarm, I wasn't like waking up and turning it off before it went off. It went off, and I didn't know where the hell I was. None of us know where the hell we are. None of us know where the hell we are right now. Anyway, I woke up
And where we are is
that feeling was
completely
correct.
unknown.
Yeah, that feeling that I had is where the hell am I? I'm still overwhelmed by that feeling.
But look, I mean, we're in uncharted waters here to some extent, but we've seen this before. We've seen recounts in America before. We've seen legal challenges in America before. We've seen long counts. We're not in some sort of panic zone here. We're in a zone where the counting process is happening.
There's no
The legal
chance.
process is happening. Right, we don't have a disputed election at this point, despite what the president said overnight, which he made an allegation of fraud, which is entirely baseless. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is a legal and deliberate count. And at some point, we're going to get a result.
26.
Thus far, everything to some degree, I don't know if the
네.
outcome will be expected.
20대
but
24,
the outcome in terms
25
of the
근처.
timing,
네.
and I think all
제
of the
기억력이 나쁘진
messages that
않군요.
are happening
25 근처.
are happening. So, this part's not a surprise.
This is
다라라리라. Make sure you drink lots of water.
Saying for days and days and days, for weeks.
Days,
you're
days
not
and
gonna get
days.
some results immediately.
Days
Then
and
you're
days
gonna
and
have
days.
Both sides either trying to claim victory.
Well, we know
that
it's
the
not a
president
blue wave.
might-
We know it's not a
the
blue-
president might claim that
Not
he's
a blue
going to
wave.
mount a legal
Probably.
challenge. All of these things are what we
Right.
expected. What the outcome may not be what we expect, because we'll see whether the polls are right or wrong. But I'm just saying in terms of
Lots of warm up
where
set.
we'd be at 5 a.m. the day after, I think we're pretty much where we thought we'd be.
Nailed it. Okay.
We will be talking to Frank Luntz about the polls a little later this morning. He
그런
said
거 뭐-
yesterday that if the pollsters didn't get this
네.
right, that it could be
뭐.
the end of that industry. So we'll see what he thinks about that this morning. In the meantime, let's get right to one of
너무
the
많이
key
이렇게
battleground
붙잡고
states,
있으려고 하면
Wisconsin.
힘들어요,
Phil
사장님.
Bowe joins us live from
네.
Milwaukee.
이렇게
and
내려놓는
this is
것도
what we're
연습을
watching
해야
very,
돼요.
very closely
Let it
now.
go.
Again, it's going to
If
take
you
a
want to
while.
grab something too long,
And what the
too
question
much,
becomes is
it's-
how
you're not
much
gonna
of
be
the
very
absentee
happy.
vote
If that's
that may
muscle
be
mass
out
or
there
joint
in
or
municipalities
anything
around
in
the
your
state
life,
has yet to be
you need to
counted. There
learn
are some
how to
reports
let
that
it go.
Not all of the votes from the city of Green Bay have been reported yet. We know that within the last 45 minutes, all of the early and absentee
자, 우리 투표 한번 해봅시다. 트럼프가 이길까요? 바이든이 이길까요?
Yesterday here in the city of Milwaukee, those were finalized,
Let's guess.
brought over
Do you
to
think
Milwaukee
Trump is gonna
County,
win or
and that
Biden?
was the big boost that was
Let's
given to
guess.
Joe Biden, which then put him ahead, at least for now, of Donald Trump by about 10,000 votes. But again, there's still a number of different areas where, to our understanding, we're trying to get some clarification from the state election officials out there. To our understanding, there are some areas where absentee ballots may not yet be counted. So as a result, what you're looking at is, as Eamon was explaining, a very, very, very narrowly tentative lead for Joe Biden. But certainly, we're not at a point where anybody is saying, okay, yeah, we've locked it down for Wisconsin.
Hey, Phil, I heard earlier today, maybe a few hours ago, you were saying that it could take until Thursday. I don't know if it was you or somebody else who was saying that it could take until Thursday to get all the votes counted in Wisconsin. Is that still what you're hearing from election officials there?
Yes, that is what we're hearing. Now, most of them are optimistic that if the margin was not this thin, that they would be in a position where they could say either Donald Trump or Joe Biden was the winner for the state of Wisconsin. That's not going to happen. You've got a gap here, roughly 10,000 votes, maybe
네, 많이 내려놨어요.
10,000 votes.
내려놓으니까 이렇게 많이 웃을 수 있는 거예요.
I would not be surprised if it does go into
내려놓지 못하면 웃기가
later
힘들어요.
today or Thursday, it's going to take some time before they can say, okay, we believe that we have all the ballots.
아,
Phil, just in the meantime, the election officials there
자, 물
keep saying that this
금세
is what they
500ml 맛있어요.
anticipated.
Another half
Those
liter.
absentee ballots in.
Well, yes, it was not, when you mentioned to them the possibility that you were going to have some outstanding absentee ballots from around the state, you never got the impression that, oh no, we're definitely going to have
아니,
everything
머리 빠지는
locked
거는
in
유전이에요.
100%,
그래서
by early Wednesday morning. There was always the
중동
possibility that you were
친구들은
going to be
그
waiting,
이란이나
some votes. So we're-
그 사우디나 그렇게
but now we're
이스라엘 친구들 20대 초반부터 머리 많이 빠져요. 전 세계에서 가장 돈 많이 벌고 유명한 사람이 누구예요? The Rock. 아니다. 돈 많이 제일 많이 버는 기업이는 제프 베소스 아마존. 머리 없어요? The Rock도 머리 없어요, 여러분. 머리 없어도 인기 많아요, 여러분.
Right. And remember, this is a smaller gap right now. It depending on whether or not this holds up.
머리털보다 우리 내면의 아름다움을 빌드업 하시기 바랍니다, 세연님. Alright? Let's focus on inside. Inside.
And that was close enough. Phil, thank you. We appreciate it. We'll check back in.
Coming up, when we come back, much more on the impact of this election on your money. Check out the movement in U.S. equity futures overnight. We have a big lineup of investors to break down the market news. All these guys probably should send in some new notes, new pre-interview notes. David Rubenstein, Mike Novogratz, Mario Novelli, Barry Diller, and another Barry, Barry Sternlicht. Two Barrys. Squawk Box will be right back.
딴 따라란 딴 따라란 딴 따란 딴 따라란 딴 The Rock Wrestler. 형님의 내면을 꾸미신 거 보여주십시오. 내면을 보기 위해서는 시간이 걸리는 것 같아요. 외면은 시간이 좀 덜 걸리겠죠. 저 내면 지금 만들고 있어요. 내면을 만들고 있어요. 여러분, 요새 코로나로 답답하고 그러면 이렇게 호흡을 이렇게 한번 바꿔보세요. 이렇게. 그러면 마음이 안정돼. 이렇게 해서 호흡을 그냥 짧게 들어 마시지 말고 이렇게. So if you want to decrease your stress and increase your energy level, then change your breathing. So like this, inhale and exhale. Nice and gentle. You know, try not to breathe like very short breathing, like slow, nice and slow. If you want to live long and healthy, breathe deep, breathe slow. 자, 여러분, 오래오래 건강하게 살고 싶으면 호흡을 천천히 그리고 이렇게 요 안에까지 하시기 바랍니다. 알았죠? Breathe in and breathe out. Alright? Okay. Alright. Another warm-up set. 자, 으쩌기. 따라라리라.
Welcome back to this special edition of Squawk Box. Stock futures were volatile overnight. Let's get to Mike Santoli with more on the market moves. Interesting NASDAQ, divergence between NASDAQ and the Dow. Just the overall
Stock market like
Mike, did you sleep yet?
crazy.
Tried. Didn't really.
Crazy.
All right, be careful. If you're punchy, don't say anything that could move something. You know,
I'm not
if you
going to
just,
operate any of this heavy equipment.
you got a script. maybe read the teleprompter, maybe read something that people have checked over.
Yeah, that's a recipe probably for stumbles. But here's a look at the overnight session, Joe, and S&P 500 futures. Definitely in a relatively contained range, but twitchy with the headlines. Right here, what you'll see is around 2:30 in the morning. That was when President Trump kind of said, we don't want to see votes counted beyond 4
아주
a.m. or
난리를
something
치네,
like that.
주식
Essentially
시장이.
said that he had won the race. It was pretty fleeting.
Let's
though, that
see
little backing up.
what's
I think
going
the
on
market's
here.
mostly been
Today's
trading
stock
based on,
market.
is this going to be a prolonged
자,
drawn-out
여러분
process or
오늘의
not?
주식 시장
Also,
어떻게
say
되는지
the
한번
Nasdaq
보겠습니다.
rally, bond yields coming down suggests that investors
보자.
are walking back that kind
우와.
of blue wave reflation trade.
장난
Big
아니다
fiscal
오늘
push,
아주
all that
애플,
stuff that was
테슬라,
getting
뭐
built into the
도큐사인,
market. Not fully,
아마존
but
막
getting built in. I think
엄청
that's
오르고
being
있어
stepped
지금.
back a little bit because we just don't know how this is going to play. Now, I would say, relatively modest moves in the sense that we're up 3% in the S&P week to date. We're down 6% last week. We finished yesterday.
오늘 올랐으니까 좀 팔아야 되겠다.
pretty much in the middle of about a 3-month range. So
여러분
I think
좀
the market is kind of in some
올랐으니까 좀
this
팔아야 되겠어.
indecisiveness on some level. Take a look at the experience of the S&P in the year 2000.
I'm
when,
gonna
of
sell
course, we
some
did have
today.
that prolonged kind of contested election
So
result. Now, the market was already in a pretty
So I'm
steep
gonna
down.
sell
The
some
Nasdaq was
today.
down 30% from its high
So
in
went up
March, and you see
a
election
lot,
days
so I'm
right
gonna
around
sell
here.
some.
You got the
Yeah.
decision of the Supreme Court right there. Quick sell off.
오늘
And in
올랐으니까
fact,
좀
this is a bear
팔아야지.
market. And in fact, when you look back on this bear market, you don't even really
맨날
mention that
저는
much
이렇게
about the
포트폴리오
election.
조정을 하고
Obviously,
있어요.
George W. Bush
So
ended up winning. It's much more about
I will
everything else
change.
going on in
little bit of
technology.
trading every day, buy and sell to make sure improve my portfolio.
Last night, you see this backing off right here. Again, it's a rethink of that entire idea that you're going to get a big.
So I believe that this market is right now trading market, not like long-term investing
Kind
market.
of on the fly. It's not really a considered. Now we know what's going to happen type of trade. Finally, VIX futures. We've been prepared for some kind of potential volatility or some kind of indeterminate outcome for a while right now. So this is showing VIX for different months. And you see it's coming down a little bit in December, which maybe is saying we might know something in the next few weeks as opposed to having to be a hung election for a while. And you see it bleeds lower from there as people are assuming things get somewhat back to normal. But as I said, we've been braced for maybe not really knowing what's going on election night for months right now. So maybe that's why the market is maybe taking it somewhat in stride.
It's just my ears perked up. I don't know. I think of a lot of different things, and Mike, we're right in the middle of this. And when you said an election that George W. Bush ended up winning, and there are some people, as you know, that you know how it happened. I mean,
He served 2 terms, I think we can say. However, however the first one got
you know what? You don't understand what I'm
I do
getting
understand
at.
what you're saying. It's the Supreme Court.
Work with me.
That's
Work with me.
it,
All right. All right. Let's dig in. Hopefully that's not the way that, hopefully there is a.
감사합니다. 외미어 만들었다고요?
Good. All right. Let's dig into this market
감사합니다.
reaction to us now. Mike Lewis, he's head of America's cash equities trading at Barclays. And Mike, I just read all your comments
요새
from
저는
yesterday, which are, it's like reading,
돈 버는 재미에 푹 빠졌어요.
a couple of years
주식으로.
ago. So what did you see?
어떻게 하냐면
Once the night played out, what did you see in terms of volatility?
주식이 오르면 오른 퍼센테이지만큼 제 걸
technology,
팔아요.
everything else.
그리고 떨어지면 떨어진 퍼센테이지만큼 그걸 사요. 그래서 이게 계속 지금 조금씩 벌고 있어요. 이렇게. 막 예를 들어 테슬라가 5%가 올랐어요 어제. 그래서 테슬라 제가 가지고 있는 테슬라 5% 지금 팔았어요. 테슬라 오늘 3%가 또 오르네. 그럼 3% 주면 또 팔아야죠. 그래서 테슬라가 만약에 5%가 떨어진다. 그러면 제가 팔아서 가지고 있던 현금으로 5%를 사고. 그리고 어저께 미국 달러가 많이 떨어졌었어요. 캐나다는 오일 가격이 올라가면은 캐나다가 그 은행이랑 그렇게 인더스트리얼이 주도하거든요. 그래서 캐나다는 이 오일 가격이 올라가면 캐나다 달러가 올라가요. 그럼 미국 달러가 떨어지죠. 그럼 미국 달러 사. 그러다가 다시 미국 달러 올라가면 또 팔아. 샀다 팔았다 하고.
You're talking about money, you're talking about trading. This is like any other day for you. But given what's going on in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, everywhere else, what do you expect to see
여러분들
in the futures? The VIX, we're now down 108 on the Dow.
인컴을 여러 가지로 확보를 하셔야 합니다. 노동 인컴, 투자 인컴,
different things. First of
유튜브
all,
인컴도 여러분들 확보를
we
하셔야
had,
돼요. 유튜브 인컴.
pretty significant amount of volatility last week,
유튜브 인컴.
sell-off into the
So,
election, and a lot of it
nowadays,
based off of some
You need
systematic supply in the
to
marketplace.
create multiple
And
source
natural,
of
you know,
income,
money
okay?
to balance
Like,
with
you know,
sort of
your
lack of sellers for
work,
a lack of
investment.
a better term.
Don't forget to do your
Going forward,
YouTube, okay?
kind of
YouTube, you
get
can
back to
make
what I
some
was
money.
before, is
Maybe you
when
can
you
cover your
don't
grocery
have,
bill.
one party controlling all different parts of the government, it's the markets. So I expect that regardless of the indecision that we have right now, and we don't know how things are going to play out, I do think that volatility probably comes in a little bit. And I think that we're going to continue to see the market act well. And when you start getting more results coming from these key swing states in the middle of the country, depending upon which way they go, you could see some things happen on a sector level and a factor level. If they start to swing towards, you know, the blue, you might see something happen with solar and potentially a higher a proximity for fiscal stimulus and what that means for rates in the yield curve. If you start seeing it go,
Yep.
it means something for less of a likelihood of paying taxes, and you can see large cap tech act a little bit better. It really depends on, it depends on how we see these swing states come. I suspect that we'll have more information as we move forward throughout the day.
Yesterday, I was, not only looking at the advance in the averages, but also the makeup of some of that. I couldn't figure it out. I saw conflicting signals on what it was indicating. I mean, I did see something like Disney with theme parks. Disney was solidly higher yesterday. It didn't look like shut-in stocks were doing as well. Do you think the market was sniffing out anything about what was transpiring around the country at that point?
You know, to be honest, I don't. I think that, the way I like to look at markets is when you're heading into something that's as significant as today is, in the days preceding it, you see more reactive risk taking instead of proactive risk taking. So things that are bouncing might have been oversold heading into it, things that are selling off that have been overbought to it. You can certainly say that, as we saw the polls tightening up a little bit into the election, potentially some factor swings and shut-in stocks, like you say, start to act a little bit differently. But I don't think the action yesterday was proactive risk taking, and I don't think it normally is in situations like that.
Okay, Mike, thanks. We will see you later. I think we might see you a little bit later, depending on circumstances, but we appreciate your, well, you're up all night. You're up every night, just trading and.
I'm up all night, all day, and that's why I look like I do.
잠 좀 자자, 잠 좀. 잠 안 자고 저 사람들 막 3시간 자고 밤을 샜대요.
A little bit lighter and a little bit sleepy.
여러분, 잠 좀 자야 돼요, 잠을. 저는 어저께 잠 7시 반에 잤어요. Yesterday I went to bed 7:30 p.m. So I woke up today 3:28 a.m. 저 오늘 2시 반에 일어났어요.
That means that they can keep drivers as contractors. Uber and Lyft shares are up big, hugely this morning.
남자임에도 말씀해 주고 그런 부분이 용기 내어 말씀드린 건가 외면 만들어진 만큼
The conversation around labor in America and the gig economy.
아, 세연님 저 그런 거 안 입어요 이제.
Making this decision changes the conversation. We'll talk about it on the other side of the break.
대회 복장은 안 입는데 저 1월 달에 그 사진 프로필 촬영할 때 우리 구독자님들 다 모아갖고 단체 사진 한번 찍을까요? 네? 1월 달에 저 그 올해 프로필 사진 찍을 건데 오세요. 같이 사진 찍어드릴게요. 네. 프로필 사진 다 끝나고 나서 같이 사진 찍어줄게요. 지금 몸 만들기 하고 있어요. 아 올해는 태닝 하지 말아야 되겠다 그냥. 여기 태닝 가게가 주변에 다 망해갖고 태닝 가게가 다 망했어요. So this year, I don't think I'm gonna do tanning this year because around my office right now here, all tanning salon permanently closed right now, out of a business. So this year, I may not do tanning before I do photo shoot. 오늘 운동 다 끝나고 상의 탈의하고 제가 포징 몇 개 해줄게요, 세연님. 자, 구독자님들은 다 상의 탈의 안 하고요. 구독자님은 그냥 하지 말고 하고 싶으면 하고. 네, 그래서 이렇게 모아서 우리 단체로 포토슛 찍는 날 딱 찍고 사진 딱 찍고 족발 한번 먹고. 좋았어. 좋았어. 자, 우리 저 정기 모임 하도록 하겠습니다. 2021년. 네. 세연님, 우리 정기 모임 우리 총무 시켜줄게. 총무. 아니다, 총무. 자, 자, 좋아요. 덤벨 들었는데 코가 가렵네. 오케이, let's go. Let's do it. 웜업. 자, 계속 지금 워밍업 하고 있어요.
To this special edition of Squawk Box. If you're just waking up, the voting is over, but the counting continues. U.S. equity futures at this hour have settled out quite a bit. This has been a pretty wild ride to watch overnight. You've been up by 300 points or down by 400 points. You're up by 400 points, down by 300. You can now see the Dow futures down by about 100 points. S&P futures
아주 이렇게 롤러코스터네, 롤러코스터. 아주 개미들 아주 동학개미, 서학개미들 아주 죽어다니는.
240 points. We'll continue to watch that and take a look at some of the key technology stocks that are really moving that. In the meantime, 6 key battleground
자, 여러분,
states still up for grabs.
우리 일반 투자자님들 막 오른다고 따라 들어갔다가 손해 보지 마세요. 저는 떨어지면 사고 오르면 팝니다. 이렇게 제가 없는 게 오르면 그냥 냅둬요. 그냥 봐요. 오케이?
Right now, Biden 224 electoral votes, President Trump 213, but still, anything up for grabs at this point.
If you are individual investor or trader, okay, don't buy when stock price go up so much, okay? Don't chase. Something good, like for example, Amazon price down, so I buy, up, I sell. I don't buy price go up, alright? If you buy something price already high, guess what happened?
And let us remind you, the winner of the presidency has not
like JP Morgan or like Goldman Sachs trader, they sell everything, price drop. So this week, be careful. Be careful this week. 자, 여러분, 이번 주 조심하세요. 이번 주 조심하시기 바랍니다. 돈을 많이 딸 수도 있지만 엄청 깨질 수도 있어요. 이번 주 조심하세요. 자, 이번 주 조심하시기 바랍니다.
Some of the polls seem to suggest that maybe we'd get a quicker.
저는 그냥 이번 주에 트레이딩이에요, 트레이딩. 오르면 팔고 떨어지면 살 거예요. 그래서 이렇게 현금 이렇게 보유하고 있어요. 이렇게 주머니에.
That the Republicans will keep control of the Senate. That did not look the same way 48 hours ago. My second biggest surprise is that the pollsters at CNN and a few other places have not apologized for the numbers that are completely wrong. That it appears that it still appears that when all the votes are counted, Joe Biden is the next president. That has not been confirmed. And the third surprise is that people have not been more insistent on telling individuals, calm down, let every voice be heard, let every vote be counted. That we don't rush to a decision, we accept
you don't rush to a decision. 자, 여러분이 이게 결정하는데 이렇게 서둘러서 하시면 안 돼요. 망해요. 항상 인생의 큰 결정은 서두르면 안 돼요. 서두르면 망합니다.
towards a Biden victory.
서두르면
And
망해요.
of course, we will stipulate here that we still are counting those votes and do not
서두르면 망한다.
have such an answer. But walk us through the path that
Stay
would
home
get you
문자
there,
나오나요?
given the states that are still up for grabs.
Stay home 문자 안 나와요?
So if you can put a state map
저
up,
키
I can go state by
177.
state with you. In the end, Arizona, Nevada, and some are in the Democratic camp, and some.
화장실 갔다 오도록 하겠습니다.
Some are called Arizona.
화장실 갔다 올 테니까 뉴스 보고 계세요. 뉴스.
And
자,
then I'm watching the numbers out there.
alright, I'm gonna go washroom and come back.
North Carolina goes
So
for Trump.
let's watch
At least
the.
a couple of states. And Donald Trump would have to win 2 of them at this point. Or Pennsylvania,
Trump
where
and
he has a
Biden.
clear lead,
Alright.
and Michigan,
Biden
Wisconsin
and Trump.
would be much more difficult for him. We could have a situation, I think the most likely outcome is that whoever wins with less than 280 electoral votes, which means they're only 1 state away on either side, much closer than any of the polling indicated. Biden has the advantage because he is either leading or tied in Michigan, in Wisconsin. He has won, again, to most network reports, he has won both Nevada and Arizona. So the path to 270 is more clear, and there are more different ways to take it for Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but you cannot count Trump out, which is his frustration yesterday, that he's clearly watching the different networks, and he's clearly upset that some of them are suggesting that the race is over, and it is not. And I think we're going to go another 6, maybe 12 hours today before we have a clear distinction between them.
Hey, Frank, you bring up the point that the polls were wrong. They showed a much wider margin for Biden in so many of these states. And when we spoke with you yesterday, you said if the polls got it wrong again this time around, after missing it 4 years ago, that you thought it was going to be in for the polling industry. How would you clarify or maybe judge that today based on what we're seeing, at least in the states that have been called?
Well, how do you explain a 12-point margin for Joe Biden, which will be nowhere near that? But all those are counted. Even the most optimistic people on Biden's side say it'll be less than half that. That's not within the margin of error. That's simply being wrong. And the average numbers of all the polls had Joe Biden up by about 8%. And when it's all done, it looks like at best,
1리터 거의 다 마셨어요. 지금 2리터째. Almost done. Another liter.
I think we're going to have to eventually start to have this conversation, and I'm not taking sides, about the Electoral College, to have 2 situations back to back where one person wins the popular vote and somebody else wins the Electoral College.
Warm up number.
I don't want to challenge the
I don't know.
Constitution. I'm not sure where I stand myself.
Today I'm gonna do only one working set. Let's warm up. 자, 여러분들 저는 본 세트를 1세트만 할 거예요 오늘. 지금 계속 워밍업 하고 있어요.
To decide whether it's appropriate at this point, at this stage in our country's history.
Frank, I want to just drill down on a couple more states, and then I actually want to go to talk about California and some of the large implications of some of the policies that passed there in terms of the business community. Just walk us through your feelings about Pennsylvania right now in terms of how that count will go. This idea that so many of the votes that haven't been counted thus far came in early, that some people think that might break for Biden. Some people think maybe there's not enough of them to break for Biden, therefore it breaks for Trump. Where do you stand?
So normally, if you saw with 74% in every other election before 2020, you'd say this is clearly Donald Trump, that there's not enough, even if there were votes in more urban areas, suburban areas, it would not be enough for Joe Biden. But this vote that they have not counted is the early vote. And the early vote benefits Joe Biden by almost 2-1, if not 2-1, or even a few points above 2-1. I believe when all the votes are counted, this is going to be dead even. Which is why it's going to take at least the next 6 hours and as much as another 24 hours before we know who's a winner. And it's going to be so close in Pennsylvania that it may require a state recount. There's always one state whenever we have a situation like this.
어렸을 때나 뭐 키 그런 거 신경 쓰지. 키가 뭐 반명해져요? 자.
If he's to get to 270.
Frank, talk to us a little bit about the shifting winds in terms of the way you think the citizenry of America thinks about business. And the reason I ask this is You look at Florida, they voted in favor of raising the minimum wage there to $15 on one side. That state, I don't know if you're calling it red or blue these days, but there's a little bit of a blue in what seems like a red state. Then you look at a blue state like California, striking down effectively this idea of turning Lyft and Uber drivers into full-time workers, which changes the whole conversation around labor and the gig economy, and puts that into question, at least the debate.
우버가 오늘 14%가 올랐어요.
And what that says about the way you think that America thinks
So
about
Uber stock today went up 14%.
Well, in this case, in California, it's not that they were striking it down, it's that they were making a statement.
저 우버 약간 있습니다. So I have Uber a little bit like here, like that. But as soon as the vaccine come, I'm gonna buy more Uber. 자, 백신 나면 저 우버를 좀 더 사겠습니다.
Not want to be employees because that would deny their freedom, their flexibility, and their independence, which they value. And in a state, that sense of independence, flexibility, and freedom is paramount. That
아우셔.
because they knew that this is what the drivers wanted.
비타민 C 물을 마시고 있어요.
I don't think that this is necessarily
drinking vitamin C water.
I think it's
살이 들렸어.
union vote and pro driver vote. And if we have these ballot initiatives, particularly on this one issue, they're going to support the drivers across the country. So this is not a statement for economic freedom. This is a statement in support of drivers, in support of the workforce.
Hey, Frank, good morning, and you always point out, I don't know if you love to do that, that we disagree on everything, and actually that's worked well for me in the past, we'll see, but I definitely take issue with you talking about the electoral college. You almost implied that our founders
35, 40, 40,
realized that it could happen
35,
this way,
40, 45,
that there's a
50,
flaw in the
55,
system that causes the popular vote to be
60,
different
65.
than the electoral
자,
college, which is
7세트
exactly
월미가
what
갑니다.
our founders intended in the first place.
So
I'm gonna read
35 to
something.
64,
Republic, not a
7
democracy.
sets.
Contemporary efforts
Warm up,
to our
7 warm up.
customs
And then the one
institutions
working
and
set,
name of
75.
greater equality runs counter to the efforts of our founders to defend the country from potential processes of democratic majorities. Now, you know full well, if you did
Warm up
New York,
number 7. 자,
City,
워밍업
San Francisco,
7세트째 하고 있어요.
California, Chicago, you know full well you'll never elect another Republican or someone else the majority votes of those big cities. This is exactly what they intended. They said that the Republicanism in ordered liberty makes it possible for non-majoritarian parts of the community that make legitimate contributions and preserve those contributions as the hallmark of what the founders were considering. And you're ready to throw that out for what reason exactly?
Oh, I'm not ready. You and I are on the same side here. But when you
What do you
have
say about the Electoral College?
when you have me as a guest on this show,
근데 오늘 왜 이렇게 더워요, 안에?
asking me to represent the public's point of view. And so I come here to tell you
날로 껐는데 왜 이렇게
that
더워?
now by 20% margin, the public wants this
아,
change.
진짜.
I don't. You and I agree. But my responsibility, I'm
왜 이렇게
sworn
더워? 날로
to
껐는데.
express the will and the wishes
아, 더워.
of the American people. And they will look at this, and after 3 elections in 20 years, they will say, enough. It's time for our voice to be represented.
물 마셔야지.
And America's changed over the last 240
자,
years. And we need to represent that change.
2리터째 마시겠습니다.
That's not my opinion. That's the American people's opinion.
So my third liter
Fundamentally changed our
of drinking
republic.
water.
I don't know what you would call it. I mean, there's so many things in the Constitution that are there for a reason. And I you know.
Later number 3.
I accept that, but that's not what the American people think.
Guys, to change it though, that would require changing the Constitution, and that is no slight, no small feat, no small task to try and undertake. We'd have to go through all of these states, many of them red states, to agree to sign off and do something like that. So it's a much bigger conversation.
And it's not gonna happen. It's gonna be talked about over the next couple of months, but I don't.
아, 이 말 표현 알아주세요. It's not gonna happen. 자, 여러분. 택도 없는 소리 하지 마라. It's not gonna happen.
States that were,
택도 없는 소리 하지 마라. It's not gonna happen.
We're shocked.
홍창성님, 와 대단하세요. 오, 홍창성님.
Surprised me, I'll tell you that much. I never
새로운 우리 구독자님 댓글. 홍창성님
You know
안녕하세요.
what's bizarre, Frank? Frank, I'll tell you the other thing is that I'm looking at
운동 후 헬스장에서 샤워해야 할 때. 저 겨울에 샤워 자주는 안 해요. 샤워 너무 자주 하면 피부 건조해져서 안 좋아요. 겨울에 샤워 하루 한 번 그냥 이렇게 물만 묻혀요. 홍창소님 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 좋아요, 구독 부탁드려요. So winter time, I don't do showers so much because make your skin dry so much. So I do once a day. Alright, make sure use organic soap. Because if you use a regular soap or shampoo and increases toxicity and increase toxicity, increase your body fat.
It's not. Because
여러분,
if you do the math, Georgia belongs in Trump.
샴푸나 그런 것들 많이 쓰면 몸에 독소가 더 많이 생깁니다. 그러면 독소가 많이 생기면 지방이 더 늘어납니다. 그래서 유기농 진우 같은 거 쓰시든지 아니면 그냥 웬만하면 그냥 물로 그냥 하세요. 들어온 거 많이 안 묻히나요 몸에.
And that's where it becomes very difficult for the Trump campaign.
And that would be my question, Frank. Which state do you think of those three, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, is going to be the one that we are kind of watching potentially, like we watched Florida back in 2000? Is it Wisconsin because the vote's less than 10,000 in terms of the difference between the two, or do you think it's Pennsylvania because there are still so many of those absentee ballots to count?
I think it's Pennsylvania because that's where Trump has the greatest lead. But Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia do not give him the election. If that was all that it was, then I would say this race is over.
자,
He has to win
여러분
one more state.
호흡을 천천히 이렇게 하셔야 돼요. Make sure you drink lots of water. 이거 오늘 일어나서 3리터째야, 3리터째.
The reason why I'm saying because I know something. I've worked in that state. I live in Las Vegas. I vote in Las Vegas.
3 liters, okay, in 2
Part of
hours.
it is the union turnout. Part of it is the way that they count their ballots. In the end, Nevada and several networks have declared Nevada, not everybody, but several networks have declared Nevada
맛있다.
to have been run by.
자, 이제 본 세트 오늘 한 세트 하도록 하겠습니다. 한
I think
세트.
Nevada by about a 2-point
Okay,
margin.
so one set of warm up set, okay? One set. 자, 여러분 본 세트를 하겠습니다. 본 세트.
We always appreciate you spending time with us, especially on.
본 세트 할게요. 본 세트. 자, 본
Things
세트.
continue to play out, and we follow the progress of the
본
count.
세트.
But
One set.
thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Joe? Okay,
아,
thanks.
얼마나 남으셨어요?
2020. Need I say more? Much more reaction to the president's
Uh,
state of the race.
한국 시간으로 8시 20분까지 합니다.
Ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major vote in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to
Those comments around 2:30 a.m.
아, 트럼프가 될까요? 바이든이 될까요?
Before rebounding.
좋아. 자, 하겠습니다. 본 세트. One set of warm ups, one set of working set. One set. Okay. Yep. Let's go. Okay, let's go. 세배. 에이, 오. Lightweight, baby. Lightweight. Lightweight, baby. 아, feels good. So good. 기분 좋아 보이네요. 여러분. 자, 이제 그걸 해야 되겠어요. 인클라인 로잉을 하도록 하겠습니다. 자. 후. 네. 아, 좋아. 이렇게 항상 이렇게 운동을 이렇게 열심히 해주면 그거 느낌이 그대로 이 막힌 도로가 뻥뻥 뚫리는 느낌. 여러분, 막힌 도로가 뻥뻥 뚫리는 느낌. 자, 막힌 도로가 뻥뻥 뚫리는 느낌이 듭니다, 여러분. 자, 다리라 다라.
Welcome back to Squawk Box, everybody. It is the morning after the election, and we are still awaiting results in some key states. We're watching the U.S. equity futures, and after taking a pretty wild ride overnight with a swing of about 700 points from the upside to the downside, things have settled out quite a bit. Right now, you'll see that the Dow futures are indicated down by just 34 points. S&P futures indicated up by about 14 points, and then the NASDAQ indicated up by close to 240 points. Technology stocks, some of the ones that have underperformed the last few weeks, have really been the big winners, and that's been boosting the NASDAQ higher. You've also seen a flight to safety initially overnight where people kind of piled into the 10-year Treasury. That's pulled back at some point, too. You did see the yield on the 10-year note rising as high as 0.945%. That's a yield we haven't seen in a very long time. That's eased off quite a bit, too, and we're back to normal levels that we've been seeing in recent months. 10-year at this point yielding 0.786%. And then take a look at the big banks as well. Obviously, a lot writing about what would happen if there was going to be a blue wave that was coming through. Still, you see some sell-off on some of these names this morning. JP Morgan Chase down by 2.25%. Bank of America off by almost 2%, as is Citigroup. Wells Fargo is down by about 1.33%, or 1.23%, and then Morgan Stanley is down by 2.2%. The vote counting does continue. Both President Trump and former Vice President Biden have paths to victory, different paths. But right now, let's focus on some of the potential legal issues coming from this election. And joining us for that is Myrna Perez. She's the Voting Rights and Elections Director at the Brennan Center for Justice. And Myrna, this is kind of the scenario that everyone was hoping we could avoid. No clear winner at this point. Very close races in some key states. And it's going to take a while to kind of figure out what happened and what sorts through.
If you do
in the meantime?
resistance exercise,
I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is that the American public did great, notwithstanding this entire election season.
Enough exercise for your heart.
We were seeing and hearing attacks on the legitimacy of our election. We were seeing lots of efforts to try and deter people from the polls, but Americans really showed up. And now is the process whereby the counting needs to happen. Many states have different rules for how they process mail ballots that are coming in, how they do canvassing, how they do audits, how they do recounts. And then there's going to be some litigation, which I think is going to be a last battle in a number of these different states.
I mean, I think it's probably worth pointing out that this is a very decentralized system. Each of the states gets to set its own rules for how this happens. We've seen a lot of kind of legal challenges to how some of those rules were set. And I think that becomes the big question. How does this work its way through the court system at this point?
Sure. So as you mentioned, each state has different rules. Different states have different rules for when they count mail ballots. And so that means some states are still processing the mail ballots that are coming in because the ballots are legally and lawfully still arriving. And then we also are seeing states have different ways in which they tally the votes. And so the way it usually works is that there's a process for getting the mail ballots, making sure that those are counted, looking at the in-person votes, making sure that those look similar to what the records that we have indicate that people are happening. Then they canvass all of those. They give voters an opportunity to correct some technical defects and and do those things, and then they put them all together and come up with statewide totals. And then if there's any close elections, there'll be recounts. So I think there are a lot of checks in the system to try and make sure that we get the count accurate. And I think one thing that's going to be new for Americans is to see that play out in real time. Because I think in the past, we have not had this
가벼운
many
무게로 하는
ballots
것보다
needed.
이렇게 로잉
So
같은
they were
거가
easier to process.
훨씬
And in
더
the past,
해먹기보다
we
나아요.
haven't had all the checks and measures
So,
in as many states as we do to make sure that every vote is
neutral grade rowing
counted fairly and
can be
accurately.
better
I
than
think most Americans
lightweight
would
dumbbell
agree
hammer
that
curl
an
if you want to
accurate
build
count,
your
one that is
biceps,
reflective of
okay?
voting rights, is more important than
So.
speed. But at a time like now, when people have a very big question they want answered, I think that's a little bit hard for people to keep at the front of mind.
Right. You can imagine the pressure being put on these election officials state by state where the counts are still going on, and hearing about some of them just finally sending people home to take a little bit of a rest because they've been working 13 hours or longer while they were counting through some of these things.
Sure.
I think patience is probably in order on this. If you were looking for where you might see challenges, though, obviously we're looking at Wisconsin now, where the vote count there is less than 10,000 between the two candidates. You're looking at Pennsylvania, where it could take them several days to count up. Same thing with Michigan. Is that where you would be focusing at this point? You've also got Nevada, where the count takes a little bit longer coming in from Maricopa County and some other places.
Yeah, I think those are
there
places.
lawyers kind of fanning out to all these places?
Right. I mean, I think that there's already some lawsuits that we're seeing. I mean, yesterday I saw 3 lawsuits being filed in Pennsylvania alone. These litigation has been
기울기를 올리면 올릴수록 등 윗부분이 되고요. 기울기를 낮추면 낮출수록 등 밑부분이
we saw
돼요.
a lot of litigation over who would have access to mail ballots and what we were going to do to accommodate the fact that we're voting in a once-in-a-century global pandemic. And then we saw a wave of pushbacks on the reforms to try and expand that access.
의자의 각도를 높이니까 어깨가 되잖아요. 의자의 각도를 낮추니까 좀 더 가슴이 되고요. 그래서 중력의 저항으로부터 위쪽으로 향하는 부위의 운동이 됩니다.
The counting of the ballots that were being used for drive-through locations.
자, 이렇게 해서 이렇게 섰으니까 이렇게 하면 어깨가 되고 낮춰서 얘가 하다 보면 얘가 되겠죠.
Ballots not counted because the election administrator are contacting voters and giving them an opportunity to correct any mistakes. We're going to see a lot of litigation. And
바닥 지명으로부터의 수평 상태의 부분이 하늘로 올라가 있는 부분의 운동이 됩니다.
It's one thing for people to be fighting over the rules of the game, but I think once a voter has actually cast their ballot, they expect it to count. And I think ultimately it's going to be a losing proposition for politicians to try and be shaving particular segments of the population, and they don't actually know whose voters are going to be impacted when they do that. But right now it complicates everything, and it creates a very big issue when we're talking about the legitimacy of the court. Because people,
it does, but I will say the judges' rulings, for the most part that I've seen, it seem to have been pretty nonpartisan, sticking by the rules and going through some of these situations. I mean, we do have the courts there for this reason.
Right. I do think that, I think depending on your vantage point and what you imagine the jurisprudence to be, I think you could have different opinions on how these decisions are shaking out. Certainly there have been some doctrinal issues that I think are a little bit hard to square with some of the other doctrinal issues that have been coming from the court. But what I think is really important to remember is that we are at a particular moment in history where we are facing a reckoning for all sorts of things, as to how we've been inclusive as a system, what are we doing about racial justice, and I think people are used to the courts coming in and protecting our right to vote. And I think if we continue to see the campaigns and politicians running into court to try and shave off certain voters from participating, there's going to be a real question as to whether or not, public at least, about whether or not we can depend upon the courts to do that. So I think there's a lot of entangled about our system. It's not just what we're seeing on election day. It's what are our institutions going to be like.
Yeah, Mona, thank you very much. One thing I would urge is to people just have patience and remain calm as we continue to count the votes. Andrew, back over to you.
그래서 이 각도로
Thanks,
이렇게
Becky. When
하니
we come back, a lot
요
more this morning. A
윗등이
closer look
되겠죠.
at the key battleground states still up for grabs. We're going to bring you the latest vote count, so we'll do that next. Take a quick look, though, at U.S. equity futures at this hour. Still several hours before the market's going to open, but right now the Dow would open off about 40 points. The NASDAQ looking to power higher, about 260 points.
자, 으짜, 으짜, 좋아요. 후짜, 이렇게, 이렇게. 아, 재밌다. 아, 운동할 때 너무 재밌어. 자, 운동이 왜 재밌는 줄 아세요? 맨날 재밌다 그럼 딱 그만하니까 진짜 막 끝장을 안 봐요. 저는 매일 그냥 적당히 합니다. 자, 여러분이 굉장히 좋아하는 음식이 있잖아요. 그거를 삼시세끼만 먹어봐. 오래 못 먹어요. 하루에 조금씩 먹으면 평생 먹을 수 있어요. 똑같아. 내가 아무리 좋아하는 게 있어도 여러분 하루 왼종이라면 질립니다. 그래서 운동을 이렇게 적당히 저처럼 조금씩만 해주면 평생 운동을 재밌게 즐길 수 있어요. 그래서 why I love exercise even this day? Because I don't do a lot. I just do right. Okay? Like I feel good enough, I stop. And then wait until tomorrow. 좋아. 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 너무 좋아. 너무 좋아.
Decision in 2020, Wall Street and Main Street awaiting a winner in the presidential contest. The latest on the states still to be called, and the volatile market reaction as this special edition of Squawk Box continues.
자, 여러분 월스트리트는 이제 뭐 강남이라고 보시면 되고, 네, 부자들 사는 동네 월스트리트, 덜 부자들 사는 동네 메인 스트리트 이렇게 얘기를 하죠.
Here is where we stand on the road to 270. Let's show you
what
we're looking at right now. We still have some states that potentially are up for grabs. We are waiting to see where Pennsylvania, of course, lands. A big debate taking place in that state right now. We should be hearing more about Wisconsin soon, and we're also going to be learning more about Nevada and Arizona soon as well. Take a look at U.S. equity futures at this hour. Things have moved around literally all evening, but right now the Dow looks like it would open down about 15 points.
Right now.
Looking at
Check
power
it
a
out.
lot higher, about 270 points.
Check it out.
Potentially
Check it out.
massive an expectation of good news
Check it
for
out.
technology companies. We'll talk about that in a minute. The S&P 500
Check it out.
up about 17 points. I want to get straight over to Andrew Jabbers, though, right now in Washington. He has not slept for the latest on the election count and where things stand. Eamon.
Yeah, Andrew, check my math because I am a little sleep deprived here, but take a look at the big graphic of the entire United States here. I want to just point out something
Check
to you
it
that we talked about
out.
over in the overnight hours as well.
Check
It's
it
just how much
out.
we used to spend time on election nights focusing on
Check it
Florida and
out.
Ohio. You can see both of those states called for Donald Trump. Those used to be the biggest swing states in the country. Now, though, look at all those grayed out states in the map. Those are all states that we don't have results from yet. We don't know which way they're going to fall. And there's multiple paths to 270 for both of these candidates in those various states. So Biden 224, Trump 213 right now. But we're fighting in entirely different battlegrounds in many ways. than we're used to on election night / election next morning. Joe Biden coming out late last night
감사합니다.
to
선생님
his
시간까지 알려주고.
supporters in Wilmington, Delaware, telling them to be patient.
진짜 개근상 줘야 되겠어 이거.
We can know the results
이거
as
가방.
early as tomorrow morning.
멋진 가방.
But it may take a little longer, as I've said all along. It's not my place or Donald Trump's place to declare who's won this election. That's the decision of the American people. But I'm optimistic about this outcome.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump speaking later in the evening in the East Room at the White House, talking to his cheering supporters there, honking horns at the Joe Biden event, because that was outside, socially distanced. The White House event, not outside, not socially distanced, very few people wearing masks. The president, though, laying out an argument that he has already won this election. That, of course, simply not true, but here's what else he said.
This is an embarrassment to our country.
좋아.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity.
So, Joe, the president made a false claim of winning the election. Millions of votes still out there to be counted in all those states that I just showed you. And see how long this takes at this point. But some of these states could go multiple days.
여러분 저는 진짜 이 좋은 걸 왜 안 하는지 지금 이해가 안 가요. 운동 안 하는.
And get some of these other states.
I don't really understand. How come people don't exercise? Because it's just so good, like so amazing, just so good.
Republican-led, clearly, irrespective of whether Biden were to win or not, it changes the dynamic.
아침에 일어나는 게 항상 즐거워요. 왜냐면 이렇게 즐거운 걸 할 생각이에요.
Change the conversation around the markets this morning.
Yeah, look, I mean, at this point, it's possible that one scenario is
Every day I feel so happy, amazing to wake up because I do this on first thing in the morning.
Leading the opposition to a Joe Biden presidency.
너무 좋아요. 이
for nothing getting done.
이렇게 즐거운 운동을 할 마음에
have a Trump re-elect with the Democratic Senate. Again, another recipe for nothing getting done.
아침에 일어나는 게 너무
There's
행복해.
this weird effect as we look down
아침에 일어나는 게 너무
in
행복해.
Arizona because we have Mark Kelly there running very strong in the state of Arizona for the Senate.
옛날엔 그런 게 없었어요. 제가 아침에 일어나는 게 행복한
In
게.
the state of Arizona, so everybody's focusing in on those 11 electoral college votes in that
저도
state.
예전엔 꿈도
And a
없고
strong
아무런
running
미래도
Democratic
없어요.
senatorial candidate
네,
outperforming Joe Biden might help pull Joe Biden
몸을
along.
만들어가고
And then
난 목표를 이루어가고 뭔가를 하다 보면서 그걸 성취해 나가면서 맨날 일어나는 게 너무 즐겁고 행복해요. So I didn't have before goals and dream before. Alright? Every day we wake up without any purpose. But right now, wake up every single morning, feel good,
a 9-seat majority
so amazing.
now for Democrats. So look, this is something that we just did not expect to see, right? That's crazy. Gaming in this environment. You look at all the headwinds for the president and his party in terms of coronavirus, in terms of economic collapse and the weirdness around the economic shutdown in this country, the racial strife, protests, violence in the streets, all of those things happening. Those would be negatives in any political year for any politician and his party, and yet we're seeing this outcome here where so far anyway at the presidential level, Donald Trump is able to shrug off so much of that and be competitive and be possibly on the way to winning.
Did you find out, do we know about John James? He had a pretty comfortable lead, but I can't tell how much is still left. I'm talking about Michigan, and what would that say in terms of your reverse tailwind or regular tailwind with what happens in Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, we are still looking for those Michigan results at the presidential level. There you see James versus Gary Peters, 51.9 for James, a difference of 247,000 plus votes there. But 78% voted in Michigan, so there's still a ways to go in that state, and we're going to watch that because the president's been touting John James as a strong candidate. He likes him, he campaigned with him in the state. And what we're going to have to see is whether or not you could see that coattail effect there for the president. And how unusual is that? where you see these Senate candidates maybe outperforming the presidential level and helping them out.
Can we go back to the House projections that we have? I just want to take another look at that. This is the first time I've used this one thing. I know we've been using this chart a lot overnight. If we call that back,
네, 맞아요.
I believe it's that our House projection has plus or minus 10 seats. Is that the margin of error?
중량에 대한 욕심도 버리고
Lower,
근육 사이즈에 대한 욕심도 버렸더니 너무 즐거워요.
The Democrats at this point.
You know, if you drop your expectation,
I haven't looked at that.
everything will be fun and easy.
Yeah,
Instead, okay, I want to lose 10 kilo per month. Go ahead, 1 kilo.
Big bet by not coming up and signing.
Okay, you know, I'm gonna do like 1,000 chin-up today. Go ahead, 100 chin-ups. So easy and fun. And then, oh, today, this year, I'm gonna make like 100% of return my stock. Okay, stock market. Go ahead, like, you know, 5%. You're not gonna lose money. 5%. Okay, over time, you make a lot of money.
For last night's election.
Same thing. You know, 1 kilo, 1 year is 12 kilos. 10 years is 120 kilos. 3 months, I'm gonna lose like 50 kilos. And what?
And then after inauguration day, depending on the configuration there, you know, it's possible we're not talking about stimulus until well into February. You know, if at all. I mean, there's
Lower your expectation. I'm not saying take it easy, okay? Work hard. Work your butt off.
I'm checking in with you again.
I work hard every single day. I work, you know, I wake up like 3:30.
Let's begin. I don't want to sell Phil short. Let's begin.
여러분 굉장히 열심히 하시고 여러분들의 그런 이런 기대치를 좀 줄이세요. 그러면 항상 재밌지. 주식은 기대 수익을 좀 적게 잡고 운동은 좀 결과를 좀 더 적게 잡으시면 뭐가 어려운 게 뭐가 있어?
I may be here for a while. Given what's going on in the election, I may be in Wisconsin for a while. Let me bring you up to date in terms of where things stand, because there was the big return of votes here in Milwaukee. That's what put Joe Biden ahead about an hour ago. He is up by about 700 votes. We say about 70
so
just 25,
good.
30 minutes ago, it
So
was closer
good.
to 10,000 votes.
So
So
good.
as some of these absentee ballots are being processed by cities and counties around the state of Wisconsin, most of them are in, but not all of them. The advantage, if you will, for Joe Biden at this point, out of 3.2 million votes cast, is about 7,300 votes. Which brings up the question, will there be a recount? Wisconsin does not have an automatic recount in elections. However, if somebody is within 1%, are well within 1% of the difference between President Trump and Vice President Biden, the state law says the deadline for requesting a recount is 3 business days after the Elections Commission receives the last statement from a county board of canvassers. So the question becomes, when do we hear from all of the canvassers around the state?
Yeah, buddy.
The expectation is that we should hear from most of them by sometime this week. There's not a hard and fast deadline. So what we're looking at, guys, is similar to what we saw in 2016, a razor
Lightweight, baby.
in terms of who will take the
Lightweight.
Wisconsin. But given the fact that we're likely
Lightweight,
to go
baby.
through a recount and then some type of
자, 상의탈이 한번 할까요?
possibility, we may not
열심히 했으니까 상의탈이 한번 하고. 자, 포징 한번 잡도록 하겠습니다.
No, can't even start for a week now. And Wisconsin's increasingly important too, as is Michigan. Brian Sullivan is in Michigan, and it's always a little cooler. It seems like, and it's nice in the summer up there too, Brian. But I see you got the hat on. Cool. What's happening?
That's due to lack of just general hygiene, Joe, not because it's cold, to be honest with you, because basically didn't sleep and have been here for a few days. Here's the weird math about Michigan. We talked about the importance of Pennsylvania, but if Biden takes Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, or then Michigan, he doesn't need Pennsylvania. That's why Michigan in part is so important, and that's one of the reasons that we are here, or shall I say still here. Here's the gap right now, just under 200,000. There are so many votes to count in Oakland County, in Wayne County, Detroit, and here in Kent County. In fact, the building I'm standing in front of is one of the places that later today they're going to start counting the absentee ballots. Do we know when those ballots will be counted. I'm going to utter the 3 most dangerous words in TV news. I don't know.
I don't know.
The Secretary of State, who we've been in touch
I
with,
don't know.
does not know. They are hoping, obviously, to get some kind of result today. But yesterday, they said it could go as far as Friday.
여러분,
To Phil's point about a recount, if the election
영상이
is
도움이
under
되셨다면
2,000
좋아요,
votes, which
구독
seems ridiculous, but
부탁드립니다.
possible, it's an automatic recount.
재밌다.
Recounts can also be ordered by
Thanks for watching my video.
allegations of fraud or allegations
If you have any
of
question, you can write down here.
errors. So there you go. There is a record number of absentee ballots.
I will make sure to
They are
answer,
still
okay?
counting those, as
Tomorrow.
you might imagine.
Or you can join me
We see
tomorrow.
16
Toronto time tomorrow 5 a.m.
And it's
한국
gonna be
시간으로
close, right?
자
The president is up by
내일
197,000.
Korea time tomorrow
But we still have an
7
unknown
p.m.
number of
Okay?
votes still
So,
to come,
I
and
will-
it's gonna come down to exactly the counties that we pinpoint.
뭐 사람마다 틀리죠. 사람마다 다르죠.
And
그래서
maybe Muskegon,
이
to the earlier point you made with Eamon,
여러분
John James, and we've said
항상 이렇게 꾸준히 하시는 게 중요합니다. 아침에 일어나자마자. Alright? Most important thing is the first thing in the morning, be consistent. That's most important. Okay guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, make a lot of money, and gain a lot of muscle, lose a lot of fat, enjoy your day. 자, 여러분들 돈 많이 버시고 근육 많이 만드시고 체지방 감량 많이 하시고 즐거운 하루 보내시기 바랍니다. 편안한 밤 보내시기 바랍니다. 안녕.
The only thing that we will be able to say